All right, so let's get started. So your first task is going to be converting an implementation of the try data structure from Java to Python, and you'll do this one without the AI support. So your second task will be converting an implementation of the priority queue data structure from Java to Python, and you'll do that one with the AI support. And we'll also take a
Okay.
break between the two tasks because this session, it will take the full 2 hours. So
Mhm.
first, let me tell you a little bit more about this code translation task. So the task is to produce a complete and working Python translation within 30 minutes. By complete, I mean all of the functionality and documentation from the Java code, it should be translated. And by working, I mean that the Python code should be like tested for correctness. But as I mentioned earlier, there's more work to do to accomplish like an absolutely perfect translation than what you'll be able to do within 30 minutes. Um, so really what I'm asking you to do is just do as much as you can in the time that you have. And there might be trade-offs in how you spend your time, such as, if you choose to translate all of the functionality first, or if you want to translate a portion of it and then test it to make sure it works. How you navigate that trade-off is completely up to you. A
Okay.
few other things I should mention about the task. One is you'll be using an online version of the VS Code editor in this study. If you've never used the sort of web version, it has a few minor differences from the desktop app. But in general, like all of the menu commands are there, all the keystrokes are available, and everything should just work. But if you have any trouble with it, do, let me know. I will not be able to answer any technical questions about the code or what it's supposed to do, but I can tell you that the Java implementation is correct.
Okay.
When you do make the translation, please do try to preserve the naming of things like classes and method names, but we're less concerned with how you name variables. And also you can use whatever resources you feel would be helpful. So if you need to search the web or you need to, search Stack Overflow or run any of the code, you can do all of that. We've installed Java and Python in the machine.
Okay.
And I'll give you a 5 minute sort of heads up to let you know when to start wrapping up your work. And then the last thing we ask is that as you work on the tasks, we ask that you think out loud and kind of talk through what you're thinking and what you're doing, because that really helps us understand how you're approaching the task and sort of understand what's going on inside of your head as you do these translation tasks. So, sometimes if you're quiet, I'll give you like a little nudge to ask you, what are you thinking right now, or what's going on.
Okay.
So
I see.
any questions about any of this?
Just a comment, which I think was also reflected in the survey that came before this calendar invite, but that
Hmm.
I'm not that familiar with the tree data structure as
That's
I
okay.
am with the priority queue. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's okay.
All right.
All right, so let's get started. Okay, so I mentioned the first task, you're going to translate the try from Java to Python, and you'll do this one without the AI support. So I'm going to send you the link in chat here. So if you can go to that URL, and also if you can share your screen now.
Okay. Oh, I need. Okay, wait. I wasn't connected to the VPN. Let me also do that.
Oh, yeah, you'd need to be on VPN.
This link is going to work fine with Firefox, right?
Yeah, so with Firefox, you may get this like yellow bordered screen telling you caution about the server's SSL certificate.
Certificates.
It's okay. Like we signed it with the IBM certificate, so I don't
Yeah,
know
yeah,
why Firefox complain. Firefox is the only browser to complain, but
yeah.
like
I
it's like
think
it's
so.
okay.
Okay, that happens with a lot of the IBM websites because they're self-signed certificates.
Yeah.
Let me also share my screen.
Yeah. Thank you.
believe you can see it now, but
Okay,
there's nothing here.
it's not loading.
Okay.
Good. All right. So here you see there's two files, right? Try.java and try.py. So we just ask that you put your solution in try.py. So
Okay.
all right. So I'm going to start a timer for 30 minutes and we can get started.
All right. Thanks. Um, so I Yeah, so just a question. So you'll always be around. Uh, okay, so all right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be sort of sitting in the background taking some notes.
Okay,
And just kind of think out loud what you're thinking about, what you're working on, just so we have an idea later in the recording of what was going on.
okay. I'm just as of now, I'm just mapping out the high level structure of the code into Python. So classes go as classes, and methods will be added just as I encounter them. So that's what I'm going. That's what I'm aiming first. So which is why there may not be much to say.
So what are you thinking about right now?
So what I'm thinking about is firstly because Java has this commonality of having nested classes, but in Python it probably isn't a good idea to have inner classes, at least because I haven't encountered them. At least that's what I think because I haven't encountered them as much. So I just thought of all changing my strategy to first look at the overview of the code and then uh, implement it probably differently than how it is done in Java because the practices are very different in the two languages. At this point, I'm trying to find a good example for inner classes in Python, which I could use as a reference. just creating a mapping between the variables that are there in the inner class, and also I've created a separate class for that, not nested. And yeah, I'm just creating the same attributes in Python. So now I have the inner class in Java that was in Java implemented, or at least translated. Quickly add the documentation for it. Is documentation part of the translation? As in the task?
Yeah. Yeah, we consider documentation to be part of like a complete translation.
Okay.
So what are you thinking about right now?
I'm trying to understand what this method was doing because that is the next one that I have to translate. Um, so I see a for loop here wherein it's iterating over the number of children, but then this method seems to be something, okay, something that I'm not familiar with. So, it's trying to-
So what are you thinking about right now?
So this method, what it does is that if the key uh, if the key does not exist, it provides this it adds this mapping for that key in the dictionary. So as far as I'm aware, dictionaries in Python do not have such a method as Java does for the hash map. So I'm trying to translate that out into Python here. So what I'm trying to do is for this part is roughly the same, wherein I get to every letter in the string in the word, and then like it's done in this code, get the children for this for the root and do the same translate mapping, create a mapping for every character in the past word array, sorry, word string.
All right, thanks. Okay, we've got about 5 minutes left on this.
Okay. Is there a separate place where I have to test it, or I have to test it, I mean, by myself? There's no test case kind of thing, right?
No, there's no test cases.
Okay.
So if you would want to test it, you would have to write your own.
Okay. I think in that case, I'll go on with the translation instead of spending time with the test.
All right, so I'm going to ask you to stop working right now.
Okay.
And let me send you the link to the survey. Okay. Okay, so here your participant ID is P05. Yep, and then this was the no AI
That's it.
and try. Yep, all right. And also for these questions, if you could say a little bit about like why you're rating them the way
Okay.
that would help
Right.
us.
So, right. So I wouldn't say very high because the translation, at least to the part that I got, was not supremely demanding. It was either it was because of the methods that I had gotten to, that the analogs or the parallels in the two languages were fairly straightforward. The one hiccup that I pointed out was the compute value method in the hash map. So therefore, 18 and um, hurried or rushed. I I would definitely say that 30 minutes isn't enough time, but you already acknowledged that early on. Um, so I would say, yeah, if I was assuming I was targeting to complete the whole thing, then I'd say it was quite hurried.
Mhm. Well, I would say rate it like how you felt, how
Yeah,
you actually do it,
no,
not how you
okay,
anticipate.
how I felt, right. Okay, so how I felt was not, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. So how I felt was not rushed because I know that I'm not being evaluated. So I think I would say somewhere around 6. Because A, I do not exactly know, and I haven't been able to complete it. Um, how hard did I have to work? Somewhere, yeah, somewhere in the middle, because not neither very high, not a lot, and not completely a piece of cake either. Okay. Uh, I think somewhat because I used to program in Java, but it's all looking very new to me now. And well, there's also the environment. I'm not really fond of this, uh, kind of surveillance coding is what I refer to it as, but I understand the motivation and the whole study around it at this point. Um, okay. I think I probably the when I was thinking out loud while at the task, that suffices to capture this, or do I need to explain more here?
I mean, it would help if you can just write like a little bit
Okay.
how you
All
felt
right.
the task.
Okay. Um, I can be specific about the task here, right? Or
Oh yeah,
do
yeah.
I need to be? Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
yeah, you can be specific.
Okay. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
So one thing I might want to add, but I'm not sure how much it's feasible given the data structures that your studies including.
Hmm.
But was that initially there was this survey which asked about familiarity with languages as well as data structures.
Hmm.
So, so like I mentioned before, that if so for instance, had I said I'm not familiar with, like basically the task, it would have been, the translation would have been more effective if the data structures involved would be the ones that the subject said that they were familiar with.
Hmm.
But I guess one could argue that the study is not evaluating us, but it's evaluating the translation benefits. So do I need to write that out here, or is
Yeah,
that okay?
actually, it would help a lot. I took note of it,
Okay,
but actually, it would help if you can just type that
all
quickly.
right, sure.
And
Okay, yeah.
I'll say something about that at the end. I can't say it right now, but I'll say something about that at the end.
Okay.
Hmm. Okay, great. So we're at sort of the halfway point. Why don't we take a few minutes break before we
Okay,
start the
sure.
task? All right. So
All
I
right.
will be back. You probably want to stretch your legs. Okay. I'll be right back.
Okay, sure. Yep.
All right, we're ready for task number two.
Yep.
All right, so in this task, you're going to translate the priority queue data structure from Java to Python, and you'll do this one with the help of an AI code translation system. So this system is able to automatically translate code from Java to Python, but it's not a perfect system, so the translated code may contain errors. We use the system ahead of time to create 5 separate Python translations for you, which you'll see when you open up the editor. And how you use these translations to help you complete the task is entirely up to you. So let me send you the link for this one. And also if you could share your screen again. Okay, so here you have the Java implementation, priority queue.py, that's the file that we ask you to put your solution. And then you'll see there's these 5, priority queue AI files. Those are the 5 AI created translations.
Okay.
All right, so let me start the timer now. So also I'll ask you to kind of think out loud about what you're thinking, what you're
Right.
doing.
Right. So at first, I'm getting an overview of what the AI has generated, um, and at least, yeah, including the documentation because there are some differences in them. Um, but yeah, that's what I was doing, and I am planning to go about it by cherry picking or at least uh, picking through them instead of writing my own, um, at least to begin with, because the expectation I had was that it would be incomplete or so, but it seems like it has translated all functionality that I can think of for a priority queue. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do here. But I do notice that uh, it probably did what I did in the previous task, just copied the documentation, except in this case, comparables and comparators and interfaces is something is very Java specific jargon and not so Pythonic. But yeah, I also notice that there are some complexity numbers here, which usually are not there in documentations for at least in the along with the implementation.
So what are you thinking about this method?
What I'm thinking is that it, so heap here is a list simply. And while it has used methods like pop and index, etc., and insert, I'm not very sure if those are methods that are translated from Java to Python, or it just simply did some high-level conversion from Java to Python without caring much for the APIs, whether they exist or not in the data structure.
So I guess I have to ask what you're thinking because I see you like switching between these translations back and forth, and I'm maybe inferring what I think you're thinking, but it would help if you can say it
So,
out loud.
yep. At first, I was going by with what I'd said in the beginning, that I'd look at all the various AI translations
Hmm.
and try to and use that in my implementation. But and that's what I was largely doing, which is when I realized that there is also a Java implementation that is the reference here. So I was just
Hmm.
looking at that one.
Okay.
And yeah, that's like the source of truth also, because the P05, yeah, basically that.
Okay. Thanks.
But yeah, compared to the previous task, one could argue that this gets more distracting, having so many reference ones. Unless it's something like a linter, which is suggesting as you go. sorry, not a linter, the IntelliSense thing. So in the Heapify method that the AI has generated, there is the sift up max method, which they have, the code is invoking, but I don't think it exists in any of these. Yeah, so that's interesting. One of them, so three of them have so it's supposed to be a recursive call wherein once you, in the end, you swap and then you recurse on the same method. So for some reason, the first three agents had, or the first three translations have a different method, and well, they're supposed to just recurse on the same method, but only these two have it. That's what I was deliberating that point. So similarly for the peak method, where again, similarly, I think the last two agents have it better than the first three ones. So definitely, I think, one difference that I do realize is that if I don't have the assistance, then I'm actually writing it. But if I have the assistance, I'm comparing and choosing instead of, you see, it's like either it's like you're asked a question and you have to answer versus being given a multiple choice questionnaire. And then you can sort of compare and arrive.
So what do you think? I saw you selected deep copy, so I'm wondering what you're thinking
Right.
about.
So again, deep copy sort of figured like a red flag to me because I think again it's a very Java specific API, but I'll have to verify. So which is what I think translation may have done, that it may just have copied it instead of finding an equivalent for it. Surprisingly, it's not.
So I
So,
guess, yeah, I was
yeah,
just going to
sure.
ask, I see you kind of bouncing around between your code and the translation and the Java, and I see you scrolling a lot, but I'm just wondering what your,
So initially, I was checking if I have all the functions or methods here that are there in the Java implementation, which are there. So barring the documentation and the correctness. So the point being that now that some sort of implementation is in place, I could be a purist and spend time doing the documentation and other things. But yeah, largely I think I'm done with this one too.
okay. I'll also mention, the one of the goals was to produce a working translation, so you can also, test and run it if you would like.
Right.
Okay, we've got about 5 minutes left.
Okay.
And I guess it looks like you ran it. So what do you
Yeah, but it wasn't correct. So it had trouble inserting it. Yeah. How much time do we have left?
About 10 seconds. So if you want to call it, that's, it's basically
Yeah,
over.
that's it.
All right. Let me send you the, yeah, now time is up. Let me send you the link to the survey for this. Okay. Oh, and also, if I could ask you to just close this window, it's going to save your code in the background for us.
Okay. Only after I close it, is it?
I think it's actually saved now, but
Okay, I'll close it anyway.
okay. So I sent you the link. Okay, so you are again P5. And then this one was the AI priority queue.
Okay. Actually, I would say roughly the same, but the reason was different in the sense that I think one could argue that it was more of a strategy thing, but yeah, getting to use multiple of those references uh, was kind of uh, so if you like the way I went about it was look through them and then spend more time debugging than actually writing it. So in sort of a hacky way to do it. The same. I'm saying more so here because this time I tried testing it, it didn't work. But I think somewhere around this question, I think in the previous survey also, by the time I got to this question, clicking is, I don't know, it's not responding
Mhm.
after
Actually,
how it came. So there's a lag here.
yeah, let me ask you a quick question. So on this scale, on the left-hand side is perfect and on the right-hand side is failure. But I think that what you just said made me think maybe you sort of reversed it. So do you mean like in this test you felt you were more successful, right?
No,
Oh, you
because
thought that's
so how I evaluate is as a yardstick of correctness
uh-huh.
and perception. So in this case, my perception is going to be less successful because I actually got to test it and it didn't work.
Okay. So you meant to rate it the way you did previously. Okay, I just want to make sure you didn't flip that in your head. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I was just pointing out the technical glitch on this question.
Uh-huh. Okay.
To work. Okay. Not so high. Slightly. Slightly. Wait, this one. This, if I say very high, it means I was highly insecure, discouraged, irritated, etc. Right?
Yeah.
Or yeah, okay. Oh, something. I'd say this because it's sort of a trade-off because given the auto-generated translations, I think I spent more time flipping around than writing it myself. So it's slow and fast depending on what task, what the objective is.
Actually, could you say maybe a little bit more about the documentation translations, like what you found wrong with them?
Not necessarily wrong, but least useful because translating documentation is, at least according to me, is probably the quickest task for because it's natural language, right? So it's even for a non-programmer, assuming same language, like their fluency in the documentation language itself, it would be the quickest task anyways, which is why I find that being translated the least useful.
Okay.
And then again, yeah, maybe 2 points actually. So one is the quickest task for a non-programmer.
So you feel that because it's so easy, the programmer should do that and the AI should not do that?
Yeah, which is what my second point is, that sometimes documentation could be very specific to the program, to the language that it's coming from itself, like the comparables and so on that I mentioned earlier.
Hmm.
So in that case, translation to Python or any other language would bring that jargon with it.
Okay.
So yeah, which anyway the user would have to edit out. And
That's
also
what
the
I,
documentation style. Yeah, sorry.
no, I was going to say that's what I thought you were going to say because you noticed that, it
Yeah,
was mentioning Java specific things, but it's supposed to be Python documentation. Uh, okay, okay. So when you say mapping, you mean
yeah,
like here's how we
yeah,
mapped between this Java type to this Python type?
yes.
Okay.
Or this constructor that like it could also be for control constructs like loops and stuff.
Hmm. Do you imagine that as being more like a visualization kind of thing? Like you see the code side by side and then, I don't know, like lines connecting from Java to Python that show, here's this for loop in Java, it corresponds to this for loop in Python. Is that what you have in mind?
Yeah, something like that. I had like hovering visuals, but yeah, line number correspondences would be some
Uh-huh.
same purpose.
Okay.
So the second one is more like a mapping between um, the native data structures. Uh, this could be troublesome because under time pressure, having one is equally likely to get swayed by I mean, when this becomes more helpful would actually depend on how accurate the suggestion is. Because if its accuracy is low and it starts suggesting and the person is already under a time pressure or time crunch, and they'd end up writing buggy, troublesome code. Um, this would be helpful for working alone. I think Survey Gizmo has this trouble that after 2 checks, it lags on the third one in a sequence. That's what I've observed on various pages now.
Oh, okay. I guess on my end, I'm not really noticing it because I don't see when you're doing the click.
True, true. So what sort of scenarios are these? When working on code that only I would use means that I wrote, let's say, the Java implementation, and tomorrow I'm translating it to Python. Is that the scenario in? Uh,
Yeah, I mean, I guess one scenario is if you have some Java code that you want to translate for Python, but just because it's like it's a project that you're working on, but like not, no one else is working on this. It's just like a personal kind of thing.
I see.
Versus your team members, it's like you're working on a project together, and other people are going to be looking at the code and reviewing the code.
So is the fundamental question here, do I need machine translation for my own code versus do I need machine translation more for other people's code?
Um, it's more, I guess it's not so much about who wrote the original code. It's more about like if you had an AI system that could do this translation, would you use it in this case? Like, would you
Okay.
use it in the case where no one else is going to be looking at this code? Like you have to translate this thing, but no one else is going to look at it, versus if you have to translate this thing and other people are going to look at it. Um, would you want the AI's help in those two cases?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. This is fine. So I think the confusion or the question I have in my mind is when we talk about situations where AI supported code translation is being employed, does that mean that the AI is going to spend 50% of the time, as in the code is generated by the AI, and then a user is actually going to look at it before it gets shipped out? So, and they both spend like 50-50 footprint on it, or is it going to be more the end user is actually going to do it more? Because depending on that, it's how you where you deploy it would, I think my answers would change.
I so I mean the way we were thinking about the question, and I guess the way we tried to write it is we're saying AI supported. So
Right.
it's not the case that like the AI is just going to do it and that's it, right? It
Mm.
will be the case that the AI does what it does, but there's going to be some human that, you know, takes what the
Okay.
AI produced, reviews it, fixes it up, like exactly what you did in the task. Um,
Right.
I think, there's a question of how much human effort goes into that, but that's use your best judgment,
Okay. Ah, see, again, this is the third button and it's not filled in yet. I'll probably bring it in when I click on the fourth one.
Oh, really? Because I saw it fill in for me.
Yep, see, now it filled out both together.
They're both empty for you? They're
No,
both
now they just got filled in.
just
They're
fill.
both
Oh,
filled in. So what's happening is when I click on the third time, like the third row in any grid, it
uh,
doesn't fill it up. As soon as I click on the fourth one or the fourth time,
and it fills
it
the.
fills both of them.
That's so weird
Yeah.
because I see it. I guess I'm seeing it when you click. I've never seen that in WebEx. That's so weird.
Oh, okay. I don't know if this itself has something to do with the fact that I'm sharing my screen though using
Yeah,
WebEx, but
maybe.
Okay, so in the first one, it is mission critical, which is why I'm saying it's not at all appropriate, because since something is mission critical, there's going to be enough human bandwidth being spent on it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So if we don't employ AI, then the human effort will just take care of the correctness and everything because it's mission critical. But if we do, then the human effort will also be spent on fixing the bugs or the troubles that the generated code brought in. When the correctness is important, then yes, it would be helpful because much like in my case, it would generate first and then they could just go about fixing it for correctness. The third one, when the runtime performance is important, I place it roughly the same because if runtime performance is important, correctness is assumed to be important. When there is a large code base to translate, yes, it would be. So because starting, at least by now, there's no criticality associated with the code or not specified. So that's the model I'm working with in these three. That there's a large code base, so it's very appropriate. And when the original code is written in a language with which I am completely unfamiliar, then yeah, so between these three, it's just very appropriate. I wouldn't say extremely because, again, if we rely too much, then there's more effort spent on fixing cleaning it up, basically.
Great.
Okay.
And I guess just quick time check, we have about 10 minutes left, but there's still another survey to do after this. So.
Oh, okay. I see. I thought this was
it's not
so
very
there's one more after.
Yeah, there's one more that kind of asks you to contrast the two experiences, but
okay.
But this one I think is almost finished.
Okay. So let me check if I'm understanding this correctly. So this model is going to generate code, but it'll only have one problem per 100,000 lines of code. Right? At least those are the odds, right? So that's the pattern here.
Yeah.
So this would not be useful at all. See, okay, my hypothesis failed. Okay. There was just a minor one, which is that I hope that's clear. Or did I? Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's also like a legit concern, right? Because if the system's producing 5 translations, or I mean, we can even get it to produce like 25 translations. How do you actually see all that stuff and make sense of it?
Yep. But given how you framed it, I think one good way to do it would be that but this would be more like on the fly, which is that as the user types in their methods, possibly with matching signatures or so. At that
Mhm.
time, the suggestions come in that this file has this method implemented this way. Yeah.
Right. All right. So one more survey. Here's the link. Almost done. Sorry.
So this one, so this would be similar to what IntelliSense does, or
Mhm.
which is it suggests you the methods you should use, but this would be more on an implementation level itself. And I think, it, yeah, I would not comment on the feasibility.
Actually, I'll tell you in a second, but there's just like one more page of questions.
Oh, I see. Yeah, this is all I can think of right now. Oh, okay.
So this is the last bit. All right, you're done. And 2 minutes to spare. I did good. Yeah, so let me tell you a little bit about, what it is we're doing. And there was, two things that I mentioned I'll tell you at the end of the study. So really what this study is about is there's all these models, AI models that are being produced that deal with code. So there's the class of AI algorithm that we're looking at is generative AI algorithms. So these are things like transformer models that are able to, take in code of one language like Java and spit out code of another language like Python. So
Right.
that's what you were working with in the study is it's a pre-trained transformer model that does this code translation task. Um, there are other
Can I
kinds of
stop sharing?
oh yeah, you can stop sharing now. That's fine. Um, and there are other kinds of models that do other kinds of things like given code, give me documentation for that code, or the use case that you brought up, which is like given a natural language kind of description, I would like to write a factorial function, convert that to actual code. So those models exist, and there's a lot of like really great state-of-the-art results in, the AI machine learning literature that tries to evaluate how great and wonderful these models are. Um, but there really hasn't been any evaluation from like an end user standpoint of if it's actually helping you complete a programming task better or faster. So that's really what we're doing is we're trying to show like, here's a state-of-the-art model. Let's put it in the hands of, a real user, a real programmer, and see, are they able to accomplish more with it than what they could just do on their own? Um, which is, it's why the study is set up the way it is that, one task you do with AI, one
Yeah.
task you do without. And we're really just trying to see like, were you able to do more when you had the AI model? So that's kind of the study in a nutshell. We also are working on some like tooling to integrate these models into like VS Code so that you could, use them on your own code. Since you signed up to participate in future studies, that's going to be like our next study where we release some tooling that you can actually try out some of these different kinds of models on your own code and try to understand if it's like helping you do anything or if it's just totally useless. So stay tuned for that. There's also some like visualization stuff we've been working on, exactly like the struggle you had where you've got these 5 translations, like what are the differences? Um, we've been working on ways to sort of make it easier to figure those things out. So for example, instead of showing you 5 translations, we'll show you one translation, but we can highlight within that translation, like there are certain spots where different alternatives were considered by the model. And then maybe you just click on that and you get like a pop-up menu to choose, oh, okay, here's the, 3 or 4 different alternatives the model had considered. So you can see like at a glance, like here's all the stuff the
Yeah,
models agreed
that's
on versus here's the stuff that there's disagreement, and then maybe you can choose the one that's actually correct. Um,
right. That's what I had in mind.
yeah, yeah. So excellent. So good. So again, thank you so much. This is generally a longer study than what we typically run, but I appreciate you
Oh,
hanging on. Um,
okay.
and yeah, as I mentioned, we'll send you some blue points, 250 blue
Right.
points as a sort of thank you for your time because this is a significant amount of time that we took from you. So, all right. So, do you have any
Thank you.
I don't know, other questions or?
Uh, no questions per se. Yeah, the factorial thing, reason why it came up to my mind was in the past I worked on this code search problem,
Mhm,
looking at it from an information retrieval perspective. So which is
mhm,
what we were trying to see because yeah, because Stack Overflow posts are tagged with what they're about, but
mhm.
GitHub code is not. So how do you tokenize, programming language code and try to tag it so it can be mapped to things like that and repeat? But yeah,
Right.
this is interesting work.
Good. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. I would say have a good day, but I think it's nighttime for you, right? So,
It is. It is. Thank you. Yeah, well, have a good night.
Your email address says you're in Singapore.
Right, that's
I won't
correct.
ask how late at night it is for you.
It's 11 right now.
Okay.
But that's
Well,
okay.
I appreciate you staying up late. Thanks so much, Chaitanya. Chaitanya.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. Thanks a lot, Justin. Have a good day, you too. Right, bye.